We can get right into it, my friend. It's on this Saturday morning. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and how you came to your current awareness as a content creator and a community educator?
Yeah, sure. I guess something I talk about as far as my background is that I grew up with mostly women in my life. That's not saying I didn't have men in my life as well. I had my dad, my uncles, things of that nature. But I grew up around a lot of women. My grandma, my sister, my aunts, aunties, cousins, whatever it is. Um, yeah, so I was around a lot of women, and like even the men in my life, they were very diverse men, right? They never like let strict gender norms kind of dictate their lives as much as other people in their lives. Like I grew up seeing my uncles, my dad, other my life cook, clean, and took on some like domestic roles as well. So I never had like the strict idea that because you're a man you had to do this. I mean, of course, there are some cultural things. Growing up Haitian, there are some things like that were homophobic, of course, right? But it wasn't like strictly about like around gender. It wasn't like a thing of like, oh, women are supposed to cook and clean, like men are supposed to do this and that. I've seen the men in my lives do multiple things outside of like the strict gender norms. So it's kind of like my early foundation of like how I grew up around gender ideas, things of that nature. Um, and like by high school and college, a lot of my friends were women, so I talked to them a lot. They learn from their experiences, their things that they experienced, things they went through with men. And 2 years after college, I got into a job working for a domestic violence agency, and I've been doing that ever since. So it's been about like 7 years now where I work in domestic violence. So I learned a lot about patriarchy and masculinity, violence against women, things of that nature. Learned about systems of oppression, the roots of violence. So I learned a lot about that. Yeah, and after doing that for a couple of years, I didn't start making like video content. First, I was on Twitter a lot. So I was on Twitter talking a lot of different things on Twitter, calling out a lot of different, like harmful tweets on social media through Twitter. And then like around 2020 or so, yeah, a friend of mine was like, "Hey, you should make TikToks." And yeah, so I'm like, okay, cool. At the time, I was very anti TikTok when it first came out. I didn't want to join TikTok or be on TikTok. But my friend was like, "Hey, you should make some TikToks. You might reach more people that way." I'm like, "All right, sure. I guess I'll do that." So yeah, it's kind of how I've been into content creation and making videos.
That's good stuff, man. I think a lot of people fell into TikTok around 2020. Being being quarantined will do that to you. But I definitely do appreciate the work that you do. What does it mean to be a breakup advocate, and how does that relate to the anti-violence work that you do?
Yeah, so the breakup advocate thing that started out as like a joke, really. I did it to be funny because like I always had serious content where I'm always calling out misogyny, patriarchy, homophobia, transphobia.
Yeah.
And while I'm on TikTok and other social media platforms, I'm seeing a lot of content creators from like dating coaches or relationship like experts or whatever it is, and the content they were putting out were either trying to teach people to engage in harmful behaviors or trying to teach people to like to basically like force a relationship to work. Like it's like, oh, it's always he's do this for your partner so they can like you more, or do this for your partner so they can like you more. It's like maybe this relationship is just not a healthy relationship. Maybe it's just time to end the relationship, right? So the first video I made about like being a breakup advocate was like a joke, and but people like resonated with it. People, like thought it was funny. People thought it was relevant to what their experiences are. I'm like, oh, okay, guess I'll make more videos like that. But it relates to the anti-violence work because what I've noticed is that a lot of the content people were putting out about like relationships, a lot of them were rooted in abuse. It might not be physical abuse, but it's like psychological, mental,
Right.
emotional abuse, right? Oh, here's how you manipulate your partner to like you more. Here's how you manipulate your partner to do better, or things like that. And it's just like this is harmful behaviors, or teaching people to like invade the partner's privacy. And those forms, other than not physical forms of abuse, they're emotional, psychological, or even digital forms of abuse. So I'm always saying that if you're gonna get to the point of trying to be toxic or trying to be abusive to make a relationship work, there's definitely time to end the relationship.
Yeah, I was fascinated with the title, and I was like, this. I like that because it's like a lot of the dating advice is almost like teaching you how to be a narcissist. Like this is how you be. Here's how to be a sociopath, and it teaches men to lean into kind of their false persona of wearing a mask in order to get in a relationship to extract something from a woman, whether it be sexual relations or it be resources or intimacy or anything of that nature. Instead of be your authentic self and then let the chips fall where they may, so to speak. If you're compatible, you'll work out. If you're not compatible, you won't don't work out. So I loved how how just the title itself. What is when you talk about, and this is a follow up question, when you talk about like breaking up, how do you? What is a good way to break up with someone? What is a good way to end a relationship in a mutual way?
Yeah, so something we have to first understand about that is understanding that breakups, although they're very emotional, they're very hurtful, to go through that process. Breakups are meant to be a healthy thing, right? Breakups are meant to be a thing of recognizing that I no longer feel safe. I no longer feel happy in this relationship, and I'm taking the next steps to make myself happy, right? Or whatever it might be. So it's, the breakup should be seen as like a thing of like we should celebrate that, right? It's recognizing that this thing that I was in, it's not something that's for me anymore. That's like the first thing we need to understand, right? And stop demonizing breakups or seeing breakups as like a failure of a relationship,
Right.
because it could have been a great relationship. It's just something you realize not for you anymore, right? So something like that. And also like we have to get rid of this idea that I have to wait to hate my partner to break up with them when I can realize we're just not compatible, right? And we can end it here. Maybe we can have a friendship. Maybe we don't have a friendship. But recognizing that we've reached the point where we're not working anymore. But as far as like proper way to break up, every relationship you should feel comfortable coming to your partner and having difficult conversations, right? You should never be afraid or feel worried that your partner's going to retaliate or be violent against you just for bringing up a serious topic or an emotional topic. So both partners or anybody in a relationship should make it a safe space for the partner to come out and communicate with them. And that's when you can like have relationships where I can come to you openly, like face to face, and I don't have to text. I don't have to go about texting it to you from like a distance, saying, "Hey, I can't see you in person. So let me just text you this breakup because I don't know how you're gonna react." It should be a thing of like hey, I'm feeling some type of way. I want to meet with you face to face, and I'm gonna tell you, "Hey, I know we had a good run, or maybe we didn't have a good run, but I no longer want to be in this anymore." It should be something you do like in person. I believe should be in person, or let's say it is a long distance relationship, then you do it, over the phone or if you need to. But the easiest way to break up, it should be just a simple conversation of saying, "Hey, I don't want to be in this anymore." And once you say that, your partner should respect that. They should honor that. Maybe they want to ask questions. They could ask questions. If you want to answer, you should, you answer if you want to answer. But it should be a thing of like, I should not be afraid to come to you and say, "Hey, I want to end this relationship." Does that make sense?
No, it makes a whole lot of sense, and I wish people would apply that to, like, for example, like divorce, right? There's such a terrible stigma about getting divorced. It's like you have the scarlet letter, and it's for men and women. Oh, you divorced, you failed marriage or whatnot. As opposed to saying, hey, because marriage is supposed to be for your entire life. You know what I mean? It's this lifelong commitment, and if you get divorced, it's like you failed or you quit. It's like being a quitter. Or you quit on the most important relationship of your life, you're a failure or whatnot. But and I think a lot of times that especially women can be apprehensive because of the potential violence of telling men certain things where it's like, hey, this is actually not I actually did not enjoy it last night. It was not pleasurable. You know what I mean? I actually did not arrive the way I wanted to. But because of the threat of violence, it's like, women also have to put on a mask. But I feel like if we can make it, if there's enough trust and respect for people and the humanity of a person first, then how you value them in that relationship second, then you can always part in mutually amicable ways because you respect that person's humanity first. You want that person to win, whether they're with you or whether they're not with you. But because we lean into the objectification and what I can get from a person, how they make me feel, then it feels like they're stealing something from you when they break up from you. So yeah, I love the concept.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, yeah, like the thing is, when you think about relationships, even marriage, and you think about like how religious beliefs play a role into it as well. Like you said, like this is supposed to be something lifelong, and also how media portrays it too is that once you marry this person, you're supposed to be with this person forever, right? And now we have a community of people who are around us, and when we want to, find something better for ourselves, or we want to end a toxic relationship, we feel pressured to stay with this person, even though obviously it's not working anymore, right? And it's a lot of unlearning and a lot of like socialization that we have to undo when it comes to relationships and breakups and divorces in general. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if there is one idea that you wish could be internalized and understood by the masses of men with regards to interpersonal relationships, what would it be, and what impact do you think that would have on the world?
I think that something that we as men need to internalize is to understand that we're not always right or in the always correct just because we're men. I think patriarchy teaches us as men we're supposed to have all the answers, always know what to do, always, know the right steps of something. And that harms relationships because we don't even listen to our partners anymore. Like we just come in there thinking, I know it all, I should know it all. I don't have to ask you questions. I don't have to worry about, what you feel or think about in this relationship because I'm the man. I know this already, right? I think it's like the root of why a lot of like hetero relationships fail because people are all coming into them thinking they're never wrong and it's their job to control their partners and control their relationship entirely. And then that causes a lot of tension, a lot of makes people I feel a lot of people feel unsafe. And that control is the root of violence, right? It's the root of intimate partner violence, trying to control and dictate which partners can and can't do, right? And I think that when men internalize that, the way it can like help the masses and change society is that we see less domestic violence and dating violence, right? We see less violence against men, violence against women from men, right? Because we're now opening the space to listen to women. We're opening the space to hear women's experiences. To like again, like somebody said in the comments, like to let go of those gender expectations, right? A lot of these are the roots of violence. Once we understand that as men, we can be wrong and we can learn from people who aren't just men. We can see a lot of violence decrease and see a lot of healthy relationships moving forward.
That's powerful. As a man myself, I had to let go. I've been married for like 13 years now. Um, I had to let go of the concept of right and wrong within my relationship because and the concept of absolute truth because especially when I started out I was very much a almost a radical Christian, what I mean? So the concept of absolute truth was ingrained in my mind. And so if it's true, then it's right. And if it's right, then it's true. And we should always go with what's right and true. Instead of looking at a relationship like these are different perspectives, right? And so I need to, even if I disagree with my wife, I need to be able to understand her perspective and not only understand it, but also, cater to and prefer it. You know what I mean? Because that's who she is. She's sharing vulnerability with me. She's sharing her her honest opinion with me. And if I value that honest opinion, then I need to be able to create a safe space where she can be heard, just like she would do for me. And if you come into a relationship thinking, well, I'm the man, I have to be the leader, I have to be the one to to bear the burden, then it's almost like you're dealing with you're trying to deal with a child or something like that. No, she came into this relationship with you as an adult, and will make her own autonomous decisions beyond that. So I really had to let go of that, and I think you're right. I think that if men could internalize, hey, I have the not only that I can be wrong, but that it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make mistakes, because that gives the opportunity to learn.
Yeah, for
And the
sure.
idea of learning from your woman is a good thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the part about like how it's not like viewing a child because whether we realize it or not, many of us mimic the dynamic our parents had with us into our romantic relationships because that's the first relationship we had growing up, right? It's our parents. That's why we have people say things like, I can tell my partner who they can and can't see, who they can and can't talk to, what they can and can't do, because that's what our parents did to us, and our parents phrase it as a thing of like, okay, this is how I keep you safe. So although we want to keep our partners safe, we forget that these people are not our kids and they can make their own decisions, like you said, right? They're autonomous human beings, right? And if you're making a decision that I don't agree with, that I don't like, or whatever it might be, I can communicate that to you that I don't like this decision, how it makes me feel. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's always your choice on what you choose to do, right? And if I don't like that in my partner or in my relationships, I can choose to now exit the relationship. That's kind of goes back to the breakup advocacy, right? Like it should not be our jobs to control our partners, what they can or can't do. It should be
Yes.
our job to recognize that I don't feel safe here, I don't feel comfortable here, and I'm gonna take the next steps to make sure I'm not in an unsafe or uncomfortable environment for myself.
No, that's and I think the idea of a woman protecting you as well. Not you're not just protecting her. I mean, that's the role of protector is a non-gendered role. So your woman protects you in ways that you don't even understand, because a lot of times we're blind to that. You know what I mean? We're blind to her looking at a situation and reading the room and making certain decisions based off of you, based off trying to protect you. I ran into so many problems in that because I was like, oh, I'm the protector and you're the protected. It's like, no, we protect each other, and it's not an emasculating thing to be protected by your woman who loves you. Why would she not protect you? No, you bring up a great point. I also wanted to get your thoughts because what I would say is like the ability to accept and even uh, relish the answer no from a woman. You know what I mean? Like to value that no. I think a lot of times the male entitlement, we feel entitled to a woman's attention. We feel entitled to a woman's body, a woman's time, her mystique, what she wears. You know, all these different things. You talked about like control. And I think a lot of that comes from entitlement and being able to say, okay, yeah, a woman, being able to respect a woman's no, you know, especially someone you like people that we don't know, like they definitely they don't owe us anything. I think a lot of men think women owe them something. They're owed a relationship, they're owed a girlfriend, or they're owed a wife, and that's one of the promises that patriarchy makes. And when they don't get that promise, that's when they kind of go askew. It's like, well, wait a minute. No, just because I'm in a relationship with you doesn't mean I owe you anything. I don't owe you my future. I don't, you know. So I,
Yeah, no, I was gonna talk about it too. Yeah, because patriarchy doesn't view women as people. They're meant to be rewards that men obtain because they're men, right? So that's why the reason men have an issue with women saying no is because women are supposed to be property to men, right? And you don't expect your property to say no to you, right? Like for example, my car. If I want to go to the mall right now and drive my car can't tell me no because it's a property to me, right? If I wanted to, turn my TV on, my TV doesn't want to be watched today. My TV can't tell me no, right? So because I see you as an object, the fact that you're telling me no doesn't make sense to me because I'm supposed to use you how I see fit to use you, right? So that's the issue a lot of men have with people saying no because like I'm expecting you to be an object at my disposal whenever I need you to be at my disposal.
yeah, that's what it, and it maybe that's why so many men, when you ask them, hey, what are you looking for in a woman? There's oh, I'm looking for a woman to be agreeable and submissive, and you know, because I don't necessarily want to hear their opinion. I just want them to do what I want them to do. That's so. Speaking of patriarchy, like what is patriarchy in your own words, and like how do you think that like patriarchy influences how we remember things in society?
Yeah. Well, the first part, like in my own words, patriarchy is a set of beliefs that a set of beliefs and attitudes that inherently sees men as dominant over women. But it also puts a lot of harmful pressure on men to be a monolith, right? You have to be a particular kind of ways for you to be considered a man, right? And I think that's the harm that comes to a lot of men when it comes to patriarchy. And it prevents individuality, right? It prevents me from being an individual person, right? I can't be my own kind of man. I have to be this kind of man. I have to be that kind of man. I can't be the man that I think I want to be, or even be the person that I want to be, right? And I think this like impacts how I remember things in general because if men are supposed to be the dominant ones, I'm supposed to always look to them for what look up to them for what they do and what they have accomplished, while believing that the women were never in existence, right? Like if you ask, a lot of people, I do this with some students I work with. I ask them, who's a memorable figure that's a woman from the 1800s? Most you might hear is Harriet Tubman, right? And like nobody besides that because like they don't really hear about it, right? So like the accomplishments of women, the achievements of women, all these different things barely get talked about or acknowledged because we live in a society that has beliefs that men are the dominant ones. Men created everything, men built everything, men saved everything, men did all these different things, and women were just there like in the background, right? But as if women weren't, trying to fight in wars, women were trying to, build communities as well, or and they also built communities as well, all these different things. So because we kind of have this idea that women are like on the back burner or like they're like on the sidelines, we don't remember all the great things women have done in the past, right? So that's how patriarchy, like is defined in my own words, and also how it impacts our memory and the things that are like written down into our history, if that makes sense.
No, I think that I think Tiffany said that's a great description. The wireless woman said the locks are giving.
Getting a little long now, yeah. I actually need to retwist. So if I want to pay for my retwist, hit my Cash App and my Venmo.
um, Jay Stewart says my wife says no all the time. I don't accept it or like it. It is that why I have is it is that's why I have hobbies. I don't I and I think that's that made me think of like the concept of a man cave, and I've always tried to resist that idea because it's like you basically have a refuge. You're building a refuge for yourself away from your family. If you feel like you need to do that, then there's something interpersonal going on. You know what I mean? Of course, everybody needs a break or something like that, and everyone needs to feel like their house is their own space. But at the same time, if it's truly a man cave, if you're truly that's your retreat away from your family, like I feel like there's work to be done there. You know what I mean? Because you should feel at home in any room in your house, and so should your family. You know what I mean? One of the things that I had to work on in myself is that my mood and my expressions on my face. Sometimes I would be upset. I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't do anything, but people could feel like the smoldering coals, burning in my furnace, and it would they'd be feeling like they're on eggshells or whatnot. So I really had to look at why am I an angry person? Why am I an angry man? And start to work on that. That's why I think therapy is like very important for men, just like it's important for everyone, because you really need to get down to the root cause of where your emotions are coming from. What triggers you? What doesn't trigger you? Why do you react in certain ways in certain situations? All that comes into self awareness. So I would disagree with that whole concept of going or not maybe it's not a man cave, but maybe it's a hobby. Or it's but you're using your hobby as a hiding place or way to get away from everybody else. I think on a routine basis, I don't know if that's the healthiest thing.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the need for space in any relationship. You need time for yourself for sure. But like you said, if it's a thing of like I want to hide from my family, I want to hide from my relationship, then yeah, you definitely need some work needs to be done there for sure. Yeah.
Yep. Can you name a few women whose names should be remembered for all time because of what they did?
Um, I say like any person in general who's ever done anything throughout history, man or woman, should be remembered because if somebody did something wrong, we should remember their names and remember what they did so we don't repeat the same mistakes. Um, so yeah, I think every person's name, every woman's name should be remembered. But I like when I think of like women throughout history who've done a lot of great things that should be remembered. I think of like people like Kimberly Crenshaw, who I believe like coined the phrase and the work around intersectionality, right? I also think of like Alice Walker on her coining and like teaching of like womanism. So like understanding like these two women particularly talking about intersections of being a woman, right? Being a queer woman, being a trans woman, being a black woman, being a working class woman, whatever it is. All these like recognizing that those like bringing those topics into the like the forefront of conversations helps us really navigate things for sure, right? So like recognizing how different identities play a role in how we navigate life. So particularly those two women for sure, Kimberly Crenshaw and Alice Walker, come to mind for sure. Like somebody said in the comments, Bell Hooks, yeah, for sure. Her
Yeah.
work around masculinity and patriarchy. Um, People I can think of right now, or I'm gonna like, or like even Marsha P. Johnson, a trans woman, for her work around the queer community and like trans women, all these different things. So I think of those women's names should definitely be talked about more. They should be highlighted in books. It should be taught in schools. I believe like every household should know about Alice Walker, Kimberly Crenshaw, Marsha P. Johnson. Like all those people should definitely be talked about and remembered throughout history.
No, I love your selections. It's like, and I think if people knew more about those figures, like it would make a lot of conversations we're having now easier. Like I think a lot of times, specifically black men, but I think men in general, but black men make the mistake of confusing a feminist with a womanist. Like they don't even know the difference. It's just all feminists. There's no distinction between different types of feminism. So they'll start naming consequences of like girl boss feminism and white tea feminism, and kind of superimposing that on people that identify as womanists who are really dealing with specifically misogynoir and black women's issues. So but understanding that distinction may help them to maybe ask some qualifying questions before even jumping into the conversation. You mentioned Kimberly Crenshaw, and it's like I feel like everyone, at least on a lot of people are having conversations about intersectionality, but not understanding that the concept came from the invisibility of black women in legal cases. You had black men, being hired in certain locations, and black women not being hired, and would say, hey, that's still discrimination. And say, oh no racism is going on because we hire black men. And then they said, well, it's sexism. Oh no, sexism is going on because we hire white women, and black women being invisible and not being able to get justice because there's no category for them. There's not enough specificity. So the intersectionality idea was born to give light to some of those marginalized groups that aren't necessarily acknowledged by law at the time. So when we get into a conversation about intersectionality and we try and weaponize that against black women, it's amazing to me. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, oh yeah, you don't understand what intersectionality is because you're saying that you experience racist sexism. It's like, come on, let's go back down to the root of it. Peaceful Bay, how are you?
Yeah, no, I was gonna talk about that. Yeah, like even though a lot of people do talk about intersectionality now, a lot of people don't know who Kimberly Crenshaw is. They just know the name. They know the word intersectionality, but they don't know who came up with the name. I remember maybe about like a couple years ago, I made a video on TikTok saying that I personally don't self-identify as a feminist. I try to be an ally to women. I try to speak up when I can when it comes to women's women's experiences that men cause and things of that nature. And people saying, "Oh, like, why are you so scared to be a feminist?" I'm not scared to be a feminist per se. It's that I understand the history of feminism and how a lot of feminism has rooted in like white supremacy and like white women, creating the term feminism, and like how a lot of the things that they fight for are not for black women or for trans women or for poor women. Right now, and I said in the video, if I were to be anything, I'd rather be called a womanist, because I'm looking at all the fact that it's not just white women experiencing these things; it's all these different kinds of women also experiencing these things as well, right? I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with feminism or whatever it might be, but I understand the history of feminism and how it has been used to harm black women and trans women, right? So like I'd rather be an intersectional feminist, if anything, than to be just recognizing like just to be recognized like a feminist. But again, because I try to be an ally, I don't want to identify myself as an ally. So if women see me as an ally, I'll accept it. But I'm not gonna walk up to women and be like, "Hey, I'm an ally to you. I'm on your side." Because I've made content before where women have said, "Okay, the way you said this, the way you worded this, could have been worded differently, could have been worded better," and I recognize that. Okay, cool. Like I get it. I can work on that and I can fix that for sure, right? But I don't want to come forth and say I'm an ally to you. You should just accept my message how I'm putting it out because you know more about the message than I do, more about your experiences than I do, and I still was brought up and raised under patriarchy and as a man, so I still have a lot of things I have to learn as well. So yeah.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. I think you go through different stages. You know what I mean? Like with anything, as you become introduced to a new topic and a new worldview, the way you identify changes. So for me, when I first, and then I'm relatively new. You know what I mean? I came into feminism the same time I came into TikTok. You know what I mean? I was deconstructing Christianity and more so like what I was not, and to start making connections between like racism, my internalized racism, my homophobia, my own internalized misogyny, and deconstructing that through the lens of religion. And then I got introduced into feminism, and for a while I would identify as a feminist. It was like a badge of honor to me. It was like, oh, you think I'm a feminist? Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna be a feminist. Oh, you think I'm a simp? Yeah, okay, call me a simp. But for me, all of those are labels. And you really hit the nail on the head. It's really a label like the term ally that someone else gives to you. If a woman considers you as an ally, then that's great because you're doing the work of an ally. As long as I do the work of a feminist or I do the work of whatever you want to call me, then I'm fine with that. I don't because we're not working for labels. We're working for to accomplish that work. If you ask me now, I started to identify as an anti-misogynist or a philogynist because I know that there are some women who don't think men should be feminists. You know what I mean? That only women can be feminists. Some black women think only black women should be womanists, and I understand and respect that. So I don't want to enter the room like, "Hey, I'm a man." That's not what it is. And if you look at it that way, you're almost defeating the purpose, right? So if a spotlight doesn't have to announce that it's a spotlight. If I'm shining light on someone else and that's the work, then okay, you call me a spotlight, you can call me a flashlight, you can call me a candle, but I'm still going to do the work of shining that light and highlighting other people in that space. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I always say like if a woman calls me feminist because of the work that I do, then I'm not gonna deny it or whatever it is. If you call me a womanist, I'm not gonna die. I just don't walk around claiming to be a feminist, and also recognize like historically a lot of feminists, particularly white feminists, have like used feminism against a lot many groups of people. So, yeah.
Ashley asked a good question. She says, "Why don't you, as men, use your experience as a man as much to reach young men?" I don't think that's a great question. I think that first of all, there's a matter of proximity. Like I think as you get older, unless you have children, your proximity to younger men may change because you're not involved in schools. You're not involved. You're living your adult professional life, and maybe you don't have as much relationships built with the younger generation. I think this is a problem that we just have intergenerationally, where it's like, the younger generation doesn't necessarily respect or want to hear the voice of the older generation and vice versa. But me being a parent, I think whenever I come in contact with a young man, then I try to first of all model the behaviors that I would want them to adopt, and then say like preach the gospel and when necessary use words. I think that applies with many different things. So setting that example, and then yeah, getting involved in your community, whether that be through tutoring, whether that be through you can always get into different forms of mentoring and things of that nature. I know a lot of men get involved in football leagues, little pee wee leagues, which I think is important, but I think it should expand beyond just athletics into all different disciplines. So yeah, most certainly, it's definitely an indictment on all men, especially once you become aware or once you become conscious, so to speak, to be able to give back and connect with the younger generation. Part of the reason I think TikTok is a good tool is because we have multiple generations using the same app. So younger men can be exposed to men like King Pierre, to other men like Public Offender, and hear their words, and hopefully navigate some of these issues before they run into them like a brick wall. I don't know what your thoughts on that, King Pierre.
Yeah, no, you made a lot of really great points. Yeah, a lot of it is proximity. Like, but for me particularly, because my work is in the community and I work with young people, so I am around a lot of young men. So that and the work that I do is specifically to engage young men and boys to prevent violence against women. But I also have nephews, so whenever I'm around my nephews, again, I try to model like you do, model the behaviors I want them to adopt. And if I hear them make a certain comment, that could be rooted in like sexist and misogynistic beliefs, then yeah, I talk to them about it. Of course, they're like 7, 8 years old, so I can't really get into it how I'll get into it with you right now. But we're trying to have appropriate conversations, for sure. Uh, but yeah, no, like social media, like TikTok, YouTube videos, Instagram, Twitter, all these apps could be used to educate young men. Um, and I wouldn't say that younger generations don't respect or want to listen to older generations. I think what's happening is in their households, there's not already a foundation of engaging in healthy conversations to begin with. So when you do approach a young person and you try to educate them or call them in through a conversation, they see it as an attack or see it as like you trying to hurt their feelings or bring them down. So that's when it gets like the conversation gets kind of muddled and kind of gets difficult to have because they're already coming in with foundations that are harmful already. And oftentimes, like also our wording could be better as well, right? Because when I first started doing social media, like the way I was approaching people was kind of combative and not really like approach like it was really approachable. So I had to tweak how I talk to people on social media, how I made my videos in general, because even though I wanted to help, I wasn't approaching it in the healthiest way.
Man, that's a very good insight. You know what I mean? And it's evident that you do a lot of self reflection, and I think that's very important, especially if you're going to be a content creator. Like always looking over different videos and trying to think, okay, is there a different way I could approach this? Because part of it is self expression, and it's like I just need to get this out of me. These are my ideas, my thoughts, and this is catharsis for me. But then once you go beyond that and you say, okay, I have people that I want to reach, then you have to look at your audience and say, okay, what is my audience thinking, feeling? How would they be most receptive to this idea? And you bring up a great point. I think a lot of times older people, and I have to include myself in that in that conversation, even though I think myself as older. But yeah, I am. But older people have to kind of tailor their conversation because we're on the same level. You know what I mean? I think sometimes a lot of older, more mature people think that there should be a baseline amount of reverence, not just respect, but reverence for a person that's older, like they have a innate wisdom. And I think the reality is a lot of, youth have experienced the lack of wisdom of the generations that have come before them and are critiquing them. And if you're not open for that critique, then you might not do well in those type of conversations because you feel like you should be the one that does the critiquing just because of virtue of your age. So I think, if you can have a conversation where you're looking for value to be given as well from any person that you're talking to, then you can have more of a mutual conversation. I don't know what your thoughts.
No, no, I definitely agree. Somebody in the comments said red pillars reach them first because even though they're wrong, they survive their experiences, and that's a very valid point. That's what I said before. Like already, boys and children in general are being exposed to harmful beliefs at home, right? Like before they even get an iPad or get a phone or able to search on social media by themselves, they're already learning harmful ideas about gender and about women and girls already. So when they start seeing those videos, it makes more sense. All right, my dad already told me girls, are like even like the most well intended like father, right? Is saying to his son, hey, when you play with girls, treat them this way because they're softer and weaker, and he's trying to help make his son like not be violent or aggressive with girls. But then I get online and I'm seeing another man say something like, women should listen to me because I'm stronger than women, right? It makes more sense. Oh, that makes sense. My dad told me don't play with girls this way because girls are softer and weaker. And this guy's telling me, oh, I'm stronger than girls, right? So now it's easy for me to listen to the red pill guy because I've already had the foundation that girls are different from me, right? Like there's the huge difference between me and a girl, and because of like how they are and how I am, that's how I'm supposed to act, right? So it makes more sense. So now I'm coming in after like 13, 14 years of them being conditioned this way, right? Because I work with a lot of high school kids up until like college age, or even like the 19, 20, and I'm trying to tell them, hey, women and you and women are not so different, whatever it is. Like, yes, our physiology, these different things are different for sure. Like when it comes to female and male, like chromosome things of that nature,
Right.
right? But to him, I've already been taught for so many years now that girls are this way and guys are that way. It's more comfortable for me to believe this red pillar who's making me feel validated in my experience as a man that I'm stronger and better than girls than to listen to you who's telling me that girls can be smarter and better than me. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's confirmation bias, and I think it's easy to be a racist in a racist society.
Yeah.
It's easy to be a misogynist in a sexist and misogynist society, and there are tangible benefits for doing so, right? If I am living in this capitalist society, if my goal, which many people's goal is to acquire as much power and as much money and as much wealth as I possibly can as an individual, right? Because it's an individual society, then I'm gonna lean into that. I'm gonna lean into being a sexist. I'm gonna lean into being a bigot as far as it's convenient for me, right? I may not go raging with it, you know what I mean, but I'm gonna have that moderate a level of bigotry because ultimately I've been trained and conditioned to take advantage of other people by any means necessary, right? Whether, and I'll use race, I'll use gender, I'll use, whether their ability, their physical ability to do so. And because we've been taught to feed off each other that way, that's the way a lot of people think. So when someone says, "Hey, this is how you become a better misogynist. This is how you become a better racist," and not be able to be called out on it, just like we were talking about in the beginning, where we're talking about a lot of dating advice is training people to be narcissists. They're going to eat that up because they're looking for ways to feel powerful, right? Especially when many of us feel the exact opposite. We feel powerless. We're born into poverty. We're born into insecurities, and we lightweight, kind of don't like ourselves, right? So when I get this advice, this red pill, now I get to feel good about myself, and because I can look down on someone else, and that's what hegemonic systems are based on. Racism is based on poor white people who also are struggling and also being exploited, being able to feel a little bit better about themselves because at least they're not black. And likewise, men who are being exploited, their labor has been exploited, they've been drafted into wars that they don't necessarily agree with. They can feel a little bit better about themselves in society because at least they're not a woman. And maybe one day they'll get a house on a hill in the suburb with a cat and a dog and a fence and two kids and a wife that's submissive and will obey them. That's kind of the American dream as it's sold. But in that American dream, women aren't human, as you said. So it's a but the opposite of that is if you take the path that King Pierre walks, you take the path that Eddie B. Talking walks. If you take that path, you will become a much stronger individual internally because now you're being able to be yourself. You're not in that monolith. I'm sorry. I can that got me.
I was gonna say something too. I lost my train of thought on it. Oh yeah, no, actually, like what you mentioned, like Bell Hooks' book, "Rock My Soul," talks about that, right?
Yeah.
If I'm in a capitalistic society and I'm seeing people who aren't who don't have integrity make it, like people who do steal, people who do cheat, people who do lie, are being successful, right? After doing all those things I was told I shouldn't be doing, it makes me want to do those things more because that's the only way I can get success. You know what I mean? Like if I have to take advantage of people for me to get there, so I'm going to do. If I have to take advantage of my own people for me to get there, so I'm going to do because
Right.
that's the idea I've been fed. Like even when I tell people, like, okay, when it comes to relationships, right? And I'm doing a presentations, doing a workshop, I'm telling people, hey, you shouldn't invade your partner's privacy, or you shouldn't do things that are like invasive of your partner's like free time, whatever it is. The response I'll get from people is, well, if I don't invade their privacy, literally word for word, like if I don't do this harmful thing that I know is harmful, then people are gonna look at me wrong because I didn't do this harmful thing. And it's like, yeah, I get people are gonna think you're wrong for not doing something wrong. Like it's kind of hard to describe, but in their mind, I have to engage in poor behaviors to keep myself safe, even though I'm hurting somebody else in the process. You know, like even when it comes to people who like stalk their partners, the fear is that I don't want to get cheated on. And it's like, yeah, I get that, but you're also putting this person in like this traumatic experience because you don't want to get cheated on. Yes, being cheated on is a traumatic experience. We understand that for sure. But you invading their privacy, or you stalking them, or you trying to control them, is also harmful behavior towards that person. You know, but again, it's all about getting ahead, not being the loser, not being played, not being like whatever it is, and it's a hard thing to navigate, but again, it's what I teach people to understand and try to create that
Yeah.
culture of like healthy relationships in general. But I'm fighting against systems, you know, I'm fighting against systems and socialization that they've had for years now.
Yeah, and it hits you later. A lot of men who buy into that type of let me rephrase that. Every man that buys into that type of system at some point will reach its end goal because that system, that way of thinking, does not respect young people and it doesn't respect the elderly, right? So, in that type of system, once you get to a certain age, you disappear. What I mean, you go into your own role because the people that can fight that are more physically dominant or whatnot have now taken over your spot, right? So unless you become ultra wealthy, once you become 65, 75, you have to deal with the fact now you're disabled, right? Now you're dealing with all the consequences of the people that you took advantage of, and where maybe you would have had a strong family unit that would support you as you get older. Everyone is kind of against you because you kind of been a dick for the whole for the entirety of your life. You know what I mean? So yeah, your wife may divorce you at that point. Your children may not want to mess with you at that point because you didn't invest in them on an emotional, psychological level. You only hold yourself into being a provider and a protector and maybe a priest. And didn't deal with them as people. So now that you're older, they're not going to deal with you as a person, unless they're really exceptionally kind. Absolutely. Um, so who are the women that you celebrate and why? Tell me a little bit about like what you celebrate.
I celebrate all the women in my lives, like my sister, my aunts, you know, my grandma and my mom when they were still here. You know, I try to do as much as I can to show that I respect and honor them. My friends as well, they help me grow. They keep me accountable. They don't even make it like my friends don't make it their responsibility. You know, I hope they don't make it their responsibility. You know, to hold me accountable, but they still do. Um, yeah, like I try to be there for them as much as I can. I try to remember things about them as much as I can so I can honor them like for their birthdays or anniversaries or things that they might be accomplishing, like their job, careers, whatever it is. And I try to be as supportive as I can for all those different people. Um, yeah, and so again, the women I mentioned before, like people, I try to bring up works of like Kimberly Crenshaw, Alice Walker, Marsha P. Johnson. You know, work from like people like Serana Burke, like those different people. I try to keep like the messages or the lessons they taught alive as much as I can. I bring it up a lot in my work, in my videos, whenever I can. Um, yeah, that's how I celebrate women on a regular basis. I'm not just doing it for the month. I do it throughout my whole life. You know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, those are some people I can think of right now off the top of my head that I could
No,
also.
absolutely. I love the fact that you mentioned Tarana Burke. And I think it's Tarana Burke's story, like her founding the Me Too movement, and then looking at where the Me Too movement kind of went to where Tarana Burke's name wasn't even being mentioned, you know what I mean? Or not even Tarana Burke herself, but just black women, women of color, marginalized groups. It became more of a white women's movement, and not to say that that is, I think it's just lessons to be learned there, right? You know what I mean? If you hop onto a movement, it's important to go back and center the people who originally started it, because that helps everyone. Like if you center black women, if you center marginalized groups, that includes white women as well. But I think when you don't do that, it becomes an only white thing by default almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It becomes and it can become an elitist thing as well, where it's only it becomes only a celebrity culture thing. It's really strange. But I see a lot, and I was wondering, like, wow, why does the Me Too movement get so much flack? Maybe it's because a black woman started it. Maybe if it was started with a white woman, it would get,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. It's interesting because like I knew about the Me Too movement for like a year or two before I even knew it was from a black woman. And I only found out about it because my organization actually brought Tarana Burke out to one of our fundraising events and she spoke. Right? So that's when around the time when I finally learned that, oh wow, this is created and founded by black women, with her experience working with black women and working with black girls. Right, and it was just like, wow, I didn't even know that. But I did meet Tarana Burke in 20, I want to say 2019, 2020. Right before, yeah, probably 2020, right before the pandemic. Yeah, and that's what I met her for the first time at one of my work events. But yeah, no, yeah, the Me Too movement was founded by a black woman.
but I think what's sad about that is this is a worldwide movement. You know what I mean? It's in Australia, it's in Europe, it's in Asia, but it's when talking specifically about black men, it's still some black men that one a don't maybe don't know that, but more importantly, two haven't learned the lessons from the Me Too movement, are still victim blaming, still don't understand the way great culture works, still haven't really looked at how our behavior negatively impacts black women, because a lot of this is based on proximity. So when you hear Tarana Burke say, "Oh yeah, I started this for women in my community," who were the men that were causing the harm that caused her to start that movement, right? If we're talking about proximity, so it's like, we how many years later? Was that 2006? So we're almost 20 years later,
Yeah.
and we still haven't learned those basic lessons.
Yeah, I think it started out in like around that time, like or like mid 2000s. But it started getting a lot of traction on social media. I think around like 2013, 14, 15. So it was out for like a while of like women coming out sharing their story, but it didn't get like the media like women in Hollywood coming forward about it
Right.
until yeah around that like Bill Cosby's Harvey Weinstein cases started coming out. Yeah. So yeah, that was around like yeah, some say like 13, 14, 15 around that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it was out for like almost 10 years before it became like a national or international movement.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
How would you raise your sons? And if you have any, I mean, if you have any, to respect and honor women.
Um yeah, no, I definitely don't have any kids right now. But I think I'd raise my sons if I had any, not to tie his whole life to his gender. I think that's how a lot of us were brought growing up. Like every lesson we learned as kids was tied to your gender, right? Don't cry because you're a boy or a man. Don't do this because that's not what boys do. Play sports because like it's how you get girls. Whatever. It's like a lot of it is like how you. A lot of our lives were tied to our gender growing up. Of course, I'm gonna teach him to recognize his gender and the history of gender and how like a history of men's oppression against women impacted like all our lives today. But again, I try to teach him like to be an individual person, right? Be your own kind of person. Be the like I try to model the behaviors I want him to model for sure, but I also want him to be the kind of person he wants to be outside of like gendered expectations or patriarchal socializations. Yeah, so again, that's again that's part of me doing that work for myself right now, so that I can be ready for that whenever it does come forward. that I have a child and they happen to be a son. And I make sure he watches and engages in media that's not, pushing harmful ideas and beliefs. And even I know that might be like a difficult thing to do because I know I can't control everything that they watch because I'm not always going to be there. Maybe they're at school or learning something at school.
Yeah.
But I'd want to talk to him about everything that he's watching. Like, let's say we're all watching a TV show and something sexist, some misogynistic happens. I want to be able to sit there and talk to him about it. Like, hey, what'd you think about that? What do you think this means, right? So that way he can have like a full understanding of a lot of different topics and beliefs that can help him shape who he wants to be, right? I think once you learn about patriarchy, learn about misogyny, learn how all those systems affect you as a person, then you can start making the decisions to be the kind of person you want to be instead of the person that you are told to be. You know? Yeah.
No, I love that. I think, and I love the fact that you're thinking about it. You know, what I mean, you're thinking about your future children and the pathway you want to walk as a parent with them. I think is a wonderful thing. Like for me, I as a young boy and as a man, I didn't think about that. You know, what I mean, my thought process wasn't even on what I wanted my family to look like because I was, kind of consumed with how do I escape? How do I get out of this place? How do I get more financially secure? You know what I mean? I think men are groomed to think about that. You know what I mean? Young girls and young women are socialized to think about their family from a very young age. You know what I mean? We give them baby dolls. We give our sons toy guns, you know what I mean? So they can fantasize about being soldiers or police officers, you know what I mean? Or robbers, you know what I mean? Things of that nature. So like for me, I have two nephews. I have daughters, and they're older now, you know what I mean? Part of my regret as a man is that during their more formative years, I was so involved in the church that I wasn't as involved as I could be with individual parenting. Like I was trying to use the church as a tool to parent them, to get them around quote unquote God fearing people and people that were living righteous lives and that they would get that through being in that atmosphere. What I found though was that the church is not a hospital as it's advised. The church is a battlefield, you know what I mean? And so a lot of times the same minefields that are out in the community, they're even more well planted in the church, you know what I mean? And so you have to watch that as well. So, but, all in all, I think that as a parent, even if you make some mistakes, all you can do is work with now. And I think part of the now work that parents have to do is be accountable for their mistakes and to show transparency. And if need be, ask for forgiveness. And if need be, try to create a pathway to atone for some of those things that you made. Not to say that I was the worst parent at all, but to say that my focus was askew. You know what I mean? And I think the ideologies that you internalize as a child and young adult do affect your parenting style. So the fact that you are challenging those things now as a young man, as an individual, you'll have a firm foundation for your children to launch from. So I think that's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I made a video yesterday where I talked about like a lot of kids learn some beliefs from their parents, and people in the comments were saying that, well, we learn these beliefs, but we didn't learn from our parents, we didn't learn from our households, we learned from media, and I don't think we understand that if you're not being accountable for the things your kids watch while they are at home with you,
Right.
that's your responsibility, right? I understand you can't control what the TV shows create, what the TV shows put on, but if you're just giving your kid an iPad, giving your kid an iPhone, giving your kid like some TV time without regulating or being mindful of what they're watching and like talking to them about it, you're responsible for that, right? So, for example, like let's say I didn't teach my son to hate girls, right? To hate women, whatever it is, right? But when he's in my house and he's watching media listen to songs, watching movies that's teaching men to hate girls, that's my responsibility. I gave him the ability to watch those things without regulating it, right? Like parents don't put any kind of like screen protecting time on their kid's phone. They don't like monitor the content. They don't give them like like they don't really make sure the algorithm of the kids are not learning harmful things. And then when the kids start doing harmful things, it's like, oh, I don't know where you learned this from. You learned it at home at your house on your iPad or your phone that you gave him. Like I understand you didn't teach them to them directly, but because you're not mindful of what they're watching and again having conversations with them about what they're watching, what they learn while they're at home with you is your responsibility. You
No,
know, like the whole.
Ray Campbell said I'll step when I'm ready and got immediately blocked. So for the people that are asking about him, yeah, when you say you'll step when you're ready, this is my live, my friend. So yeah, he got blocked. So yeah, he can't respond anymore.
Yeah, for sure. And like, yeah, so yeah, I get a lot. Like, let's say I'm bringing my misogynistic homeboy at home, right? And I because I didn't teach it to him, but I brought this person into the house to talk to my kid. You know what I mean? Like, these are things we have to be mindful of. Like, instead of just saying, "Well, I didn't teach you this thing," you didn't learn it from me, but like they're learning it at home with you, learning it from your homeboys, your peers, your cousins, whatever it is. So that's also responsibility. Yeah.
You gotta be involved at all levels, and I think the concept of quality time, which I think came around like maybe the 70s or 80s, I'm not sure exactly, but the concept of quality time is a misnomer. You know what I mean? Quality time is important, but quantity time is important too. You need to have both, and I think the generation that came before us got tricked into thinking, oh, if I just spend these specific moments with my kid, that'll be enough. And no, you need to be. It is a daily process. Parenting is a daily process because your child is growing on a daily basis, and you never know what they're going to be exposed to. So yeah, it's about knowing their friends. It's about being involved in their school. It's about having those type of conversations, and that's not just women's work. I think sometimes, if you have the benefit of being in a co-parenting situation where there's a woman and a man, or woman and woman, man and man, whatever that might be, your co-parent, sometimes one person will just rely on the other person to do all the parenting because they're, doing the work and all these other things. And it's like, well, no, your kid, if you ask your kid, hey, would you rather your dad go to work or spend time with you? They're going to say, I would rather them spend time with me, even though they probably know that, that's how everybody is surviving, whatever. They're gonna be like, no, I want that time. So spending that time, and that goes above board with both genders, whether you're a mother or a father, your kid needs you, and they need you at your best. So but I think a lot of times we don't center our children, and sometimes maybe we center them to their detriment because we're not dealing with who they are and what's necessarily what they need. We're dealing with satisfying a whole bunch of wants, or satisfying necessarily the need to keep them quiet. So you set your kid in front of the TV because they want to watch television all the time, but that's not necessarily good for them. So um, very good stuff, man. How, and you may have leaned into this already, but how would you raise him specifically to view women outside of those boundaries of gender norms and expectations?
Um, I guess part of that, kind of add on to what I said before, is like part of like me modeling certain behaviors. Like, I want my kids to see me doing what is considered to be women's work, right? Let's say they do go to school and the teacher says, "Hey, women are supposed to cook and clean," or their friend says, "Women are supposed to cook and clean." Like, I want my kids to be able to call out on that and say, "Well, my dad cooks and clean all the time." I see my dad cooking dinner for us all the time. I see my dad cleaning the house all the time. When my mom was sick last week, my dad took us to the basketball games. My dad took us to the doctors. My dad knows all the different things because just a couple weeks ago, a student was telling me how their dad never cooks in the house, never cleans, right? And to them, that's their reality, right? That's what they see. So like when they come across certain things, like so for that student, when they go to school and they see a boy doing something that's considered to be a woman's job, they think that boy is weird, not the fact that this is just a human thing to do.
Right.
Right. So yeah, I like same way I wanted him to not be raised and like to shift his whole life around his gender. I want him to like see that women's life are not just their gender as well. Right. So I want to be able to like show them that you can do all these different things and your life's not limited to because of your gender.
I
Um,
love that. Cloud said, I'm curious how y'all would encourage young boys to interact with men, like things to keep in mind.
what do you mean? I'm curious how y'all would encourage young boys to interact with men. I don't get the question. What do you mean by that?
I just know, like for me, out, and this I think goes into being, I guess, a good father. Like I would hope that I could be a good enough father so that my son, when he goes out into the world, is not still looking for father figures, right? Because I think a lot of times we're looking for male validation in the wrong places. And unfortunately, a lot of the elders, quote unquote, don't give the right advice because they weren't given the right advice. And what they built their masculinity off of is based on some of the same toxic things that we see in our society. So they base their a lot of men have based their, at least from my generation, based their masculinity off being a womanizer. right? So they're like, okay, how many women can I get? How many women can I manipulate? How many women can I sleep with? The notches on the belt thing, right? And so, I would want my son to be able to be have an immunity to that. The same way I want them to have an immunity to going into crime. I mean, just because you're trying to prove yourself, you do it into a lot of dangerous behaviors. Because you want to prove yourself among your peer group. Like for me, I mean, my peer group, they were like stealing cars and stuff like that. So it was like, oh yeah, I want to look and feel cool as well. You know what I mean? So I want to get involved in those type of activities, or maybe it's drugs and alcohol. All of those different things you want your child to avoid. A lot of times comes from more so peer pressure and the desire to have some form of validation in that peer group. So I would want them to have an immunity to that, as far as so that's one way I would want boys to be able to interact with men. Just because you're an older man doesn't mean that what you say, even though you speak with a deep voice, what I mean, doesn't mean that is wisdom. What I mean, that doesn't mean that that's true. So I would want my child to be a critical thinker and be able to break some of those arguments apart, regardless of who they're coming from.
Yeah, no, I like that a lot. Yeah, I don't want my kids to be afraid to call people out, no matter how old they are. Right? I don't want my kids like to feel like they have to listen to an adult just because they're an adult. You know, I want them to understand that their voice matters in every space that they're in. Even with other adults, even with their teachers, even with their coaches. So if they see something that they know is harmful, yeah, say something about it. If you're in a classroom and you're like in fourth grade and the teacher says something like, "Oh, only boys can do this, boys can do that," whatever it is, I want you to say something like, "Hey, teacher, my dad or my mom told me this is not true." Right, and then come to me about it after school and let them know, hey, the teacher said this. Because I'm gonna show up to the school the next day. You're gonna talk to the teacher about it. Because I want to make sure that the people teaching my kids are not misogynists, they're not racist, they're not sexist. They're not ableist people, they're not homophobic people. Like I want my kids to learn from people who are, smarter than that, for sure. Right, I want my kids to be comfortable coming to me and talking to me about what's going on at school, what somebody did to them or said to them. Yeah, I want them to have that confidence.
Absolutely. Cloud clarified. She said, like, you were asking Pierre how he would teach his boys to act towards women. How would you teach your boys to act towards men? Okay, I got it.
Oh, towards men. Yeah, I mean, like, same thing. Like, just being respectful of all people. So, like, I want my kids in general, my boys specifically, to see their humanity first before they see their gender. Something I made a tweet about a couple of days ago was that for me personally, I feel respect can only be taken away before respect needs to be earned, right? Every person you approach, you should approach them with respect already because they're a human being,
Right.
right? Now, if they start doing things that are harmful, things that are misogynistic, and you lose your respect for them, at that point, yeah, that makes sense. But they don't have to like earn your respect from the first time meeting you because they're already human beings. Like because they're human, they deserve respect, right? Yeah, and see boys and men as just as people as well, right? And not, I think what happens is when you follow these strict ideas and these strict gender norms, you just see the gender of the person and not really them as a person.
So, and we can, I guess, last question, and then we can open it up for Q&A if you still have time. If there's, I mean, you've made a lot of different videos. I love like kind of your 90-second videos on masculinity. If there's one, I guess, video that you wish that you've made that you wish more men will watch and internalize, like what would that be? And and why would you pick that video?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember a lot of my videos. I don't remember them, but like once I put it out there and I made so many videos, I don't remember specific ones. Like people will message me saying, "Oh, like remember that one video you made where you said so and so?" I mean, that sounds like something I would say, but I don't remember which video that is. Um, but I'm trying to think of like a recent one. So like something I try to talk a lot about is like socialization. How I think more men need to understand that the ways that we are as men is how we've been socialized, not how we're born. Because once you realize the things that you do, things that you say, the way you act is based on your socialization, it opens the room for you to recognize how you can change and become a better person. Because when you say something that you do is how you were born, you stop trying to work on it and try to become better, right? So I think it's like the main thing. That's one video. I guess that's my video on masculinity. If I were to talk about a video in regards to like my breakup advocacy, I'd say any video where I talk about that breakups are not things to be demonized or hated. I know they can be hurtful, they can be harmful, not harmful, like they can be hurtful and emotional. But breakups are supposed to be like a healthy thing to do. And I make videos around like domestic violence as well. I'd say any videos that I've talked about the power and control wheel, I encourage everybody to look up on their own the power and control wheel, watch videos on it, learn about it, read about it. That can really help you understand the foundation of domestic and dating violence. Yeah, my stalking videos, yeah, yeah, all those things are pretty good videos that I've made, particularly.
Absolutely. And the power and control wheel was interesting is the part of that power and control wheel is male entitlement.
Yeah,
Male entitlement is part of what keeps that wheel going.
yeah,
So I agree. Like that's and a lot of people aren't even aware of the diagram. But understanding if as a man, when you look at that wheel, look at how male entitlement pushes it and keeps it going, and how violence kind of encircles everything because there's a threat of violence with all of those things. I love that. Um, I appreciate you so much in being a guest and sharing your time and space with me. Hey, do you have time for Q&A?
yeah, for sure. And make any questions, I can also answer some questions. I guess I'll say this again before I wrap it up. The link in my bio, you can buy me a coffee. I have my Venmo in there, my Cash App is in there. If you're in Europe, I got PayPal as well. So any donations, I'll be really grateful right now because again, I'm trying to move out and I don't want to move out and then like have to like live off sugar, water, and bread for the next month or so until I get paid. But yeah. You must learn to turn inward and speak to all prior versions of self in order to resolve. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I personally like. I'm always thinking back on who I was before I got this education. Who I was in high school, who I was in like even in college. Something I had to learn too is that I can't hate myself for what I didn't know. So looking back on things that I've done or said before in the past, I'm just like, oh, that was horrible. That was like cringe, and it still was horrible. It's just I can't see myself. I can't hate myself for what I didn't know. I can only learn from it, grow from it, and become a better person. Yeah, I know, and yeah, for me to evolve as well.
Belladonna says self-awareness leads to self-actualization, which then leads to self-mastery. I love that. That's like a mantra or affirmation. I love that. You can commit that to memory. Got to start where you are and with what you have. Absolutely. So if there's any questions, if anyone wants to come on briefly, to join and ask King Pierre a question or myself a question, or if you have a comment about the live, she says, Belladonna says that is the path to ascension. Absolutely. Give thanks.
Yeah.
Cloud says, what's a lesson you're glad, proud that you learned?
Lesson
What's
that I'm glad I probably I learned. It's like a lot of things. I think a lesson that I'm glad that I learned. Oh, this is something I learned in college. This actually like is the start of like my breakup advocacy. I would say, even though I didn't start making content until like way after college. Something I learned from my professor in college. I appreciate Dr. Michael Moss for teaching me this. Is that you're not ready for a relationship until you don't need one.
Oh
You're
wow.
not ready for a relationship until you don't need one. And this is specifically around romantic relationships, right? We all need community, we all need relationships in general. When you start getting into relationships because you think you need to be in a relationship to feel full or to feel complete or to feel whole, then you start dating anybody just to meet that need. So yeah, I think that's a very big lesson that I think about a lot. Yeah. Somebody asked me on Instagram, am I French? Nah, I'm not French. I'm Haitian. Um, yeah. So my last name is just similar to a lot of French last names. Yeah.
Absolutely. Wireless woman, how are you?
Hello, hello, love, hello, darlings. You know me, I just popped in to say it was a really great discussion. People need to see Black men and Black women having it. Just as a sociology, y'all know I'm trying to get this sociology master's. I'm trying to be a master of something. And gender, I'm in my last year where I've had my gender courses and seminar and contemporary theory. And this conversation has been evolved so much through the use of social media. Like, even though this awareness can be tough, it's really making the world like safer for people. It's making it easier for people to begin to connect their experiences with other like-minded people. So I really appreciate, when we talk about like allyship and things like that, I really appreciate it coming not from a place of like how you feel or even your personal experiences, but a place of being educated about it and understanding how important it is to continue to push the envelope of discovering, and platforming women to be able to discuss their experiences. It makes the world safer for men, safer for children, safer for disabled, safer for the LGBTQIA plus community. These understandings open the door to other things that empower people to do society together. That's what a civil society is. So society is not civilized until it's inclusive of everybody. So I just appreciate y'all taking time today to make room and space for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
Wait, somebody asked me a question on Instagram. They asked me what's my biggest fear. Um, my biggest fear is is for people to reach a point of giving up, trying to make it a better society. Like where people just kind of just think the way that the world is just how it's gonna be forever, and we shouldn't do anything about it. That's my biggest fear. People who just kind of like stop caring and just you know, stop doing the work to make it a better world. So that's like, I know it's like, that's not what people think of when they think of fear. But yeah, that's kind of the things I do because my work is in prevention. So, and that requires people to constantly do work. And I'd hate to get to a point where people just say, hey, I don't want to do this work anymore. I'm just going to stop doing it. That's a big fear of mine.
JP Charisma asks, what do you do to keep safe spaces for Black LGBTQ plus people?
Um, I think something that I do around that is, I think I do this for everybody. Like I try to make the space as comfortable as possible. So like I check my biases, check like any internalized ideas I might have around like people's genders, people's identities, people's sexuality, and I always listen. And I'll even when I'm not like, and if I'm not sure the room is like has people who are in the LGBTQ community, I call out certain behaviors. Like let's say somebody's making a homophobic joke, homophobic, a comment, whatever it is, then I'm gonna call that person out in the room so that way the people who are in the room who are LGBTQ plus know that if something were to happen, they can come talk to me about it. So I think making sure that the spaces I'm around are always held accountable makes it a safe space for more people as well. Yeah.
Nah, that's a beautiful point. I think when you said listening, I think that's so important because, and this is not just for LGBTQIA community, but any other marginalized community. They're going to be the best ones to inform you about something that's harmful to them. So when someone comes forward and says, "Hey, this is anti fill in the blank rhetoric," um, believe them. You know what I mean? And then research and learn about it. Ask more questions so that you can be attuned to the same things that they are as far as things that are harmful. Like one example, I think, as far as the Black community is, there is a subset of Pan Africanism that is very anti, is very homophobic. You know what I mean? And when you get into that space, you have to guide that conversation back out, or learn how to dead certain parts of that conversation so that doesn't occur. Because you could be very enthusiastic when it comes to Black liberation, but the way you define Black liberation is a very myopic focus on heterosexual people that you think are going to repopulate the world, or whatever you might put on that. You know what I mean? So being aware of transphobia, homophobia, how that comes up in conversations that may appear to be progressive at first, until you get into an expansive idea of what the Black community looks like.
Somebody asked me what's the definition of love. Um, I always say that love is a feeling that eventually turns into an action. So you can feel love for somebody, but then you start engaging in behaviors to show that love to people. However, that might be for you, because the way you show love might be different from the way people receive love. But ultimately, it's a feeling. You can't control it when you feel love for somebody. Because if you could control it, when people who are in abusive relationships were with people who are harming them, they would just stop loving them. But we see in a lot of relationships where there is abuse, the survivor still loves the person committing abuse. It's not because they love the abuse or love being abused or whatever it is. Is that this is a person that you build a connection with, they build a relationship with over time, and there's like connections and feelings there, and that can be love. But also recognizing that just because you have the feelings for somebody, it shouldn't dictate how you navigate your life. So it's because I love somebody doesn't mean I have to do everything that they say. I can still have boundaries. I can still have, my space. I can still have my privacy. I don't have to give up those things just because I love you, I have love for you, you know? But yeah, ultimately the answer is it's like a feeling and then eventually it turns into an action.
No, my therapist said real love is what happens after you fall out of love with someone. When you stop when you stop falling in love, and then and then at the end of that sensation, that euphoria, that's when real love takes place, because King Pierre said, love is a verb. You know what I mean? Love is putting someone else, putting someone's needs before your own. And really, love is the most powerful, is what holds the universe together. You know what I mean? It's what is, it's what we're made of, or what we should be made of. It's stardust. But because of that, love can be very volatile. You know what I mean? It's like you're dealing with a split atom. So you have to, handle love carefully. And if you love somebody, you will respect them first. You know what I mean? Because if you don't have the respect of that person's humanity, how could you possibly love them? My wife said, and I'll always, this has been labeled my wife's great commandment. How can you love someone else like you love yourself if you have not first learned how to love yourself? So for those of you who are a Christian, or you believe in God, and God is love, what I mean, if you're called to love someone else as yourself, or you're called to love God as with all your strength and all your soul, and yada yada yada, but you have yet learned how to love yourself and really care for yourself, how can you love somebody else? The love that you export to someone else is going to be terrible because of the way you treat yourself. You haven't learned how to love and accept yourself. How can you accept somebody else?
Somebody asked me on Instagram, how do we take accountability without coming across as entitled or insensitive? I want to be sincere without making this about me. I think this kind of goes back to being an ally. Um, like being an ally is not so you can get the title. It's not for you to get the recognition, right? Being an ally is recognizing that somebody's being treated unfairly, and you're going to support that person. I think typically what happens is we think being an ally or being a supporter of a person um, is, how do I put this? We think of it as like a way to get recognition, right? I think also like when you're apologizing for being an ally is apologizing for the actions that you took, and not people calling you out for the actions that you took, right? So like let's say somebody comes to me, let's say one of my queer friends comes to me and say, hey, this joke you made, this thing you made, this comment you made, a video you made, whatever it is, has like some homophobic beliefs in it, whatever it is, right? I'm not gonna start making it about me saying, "Oh, I was just trying to help. I was just trying to help." Whatever it is, I'm just gonna say, "Oh, I didn't get that. I didn't, recognize that. Thanks for letting me know," and that's me moving on. So like yesterday, 2 days ago, I made a video, where I mentioned tone deaf, right? And somebody who is a person with a disability messaged me. We're mutuals, and they said, "Hey, this thing you said has some like ableist connotations to it." All I said was, "Oh, I didn't know. Thanks for letting me know." And then I went in the comments. I said, "Hey, I didn't know this. So if you're offended by it, I'm sorry for that, and I'm going to moving forward. I'm going to stop doing this thing that you told me was insensitive. Just that simple." That's the best way I can answer that question about accountability, is recognizing the harm that you've done, and like apologizing for the harm that you've done, and not the people calling you out for the harm that you've done. Yeah. Hopefully.
Belladonna, how are you? Maybe she got a phone call or whatnot. We'll pivot. Cashlin asks, what does life look like post patriarchy?
Life look like post patriarchy. I see less violence, a lot less violence. Without patriarchy, I see like self harm rates going down for men and women. Um, I see children being their full authentic selves. Like you see less kids being bullied, less kids being made fun of. That's how I see life without patriarchy. Yeah, somebody said more community for sure. Like we're working together. I remember somebody saw a video where like I think it was Liz Plank, and she was on the I forgot the podcast is the Man in the Podcast, where people think matriarchy is like patriarchy, where women are at top, women are dominant, and that's not what it is at all. It's a community when it comes to a matriarchy, right? Where children are at the center, well, mothers are at the center of it, but children belongs to everybody, right? People are taking care of children. You know, like the community takes care of children, the community looks out for children, the community looks out for each other. So all those things are what I think I'm gonna think of post patriarchy.
Absolutely. Belladonna, how are you?
I'm doing well, and you, sir.
Good, good. Thank you so much for joining.
And thank you for allowing me to be in your space. And nice to meet you, King Pierre. I'm really enjoying what I am seeing. But seeing this transgenerational conversation where I'm seeing a fellow who is stepping into his eldership. And in stepping into his eldership, he is learning lessons from the youth. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Most appreciated.
It's a
Yeah,
beautiful
I
thing to
don't know if
see.
King Pierre thinks of himself as a youth, and I don't know if I think of myself as an elder, but we do have an age gap.
Right. I was as I was speaking to the people in the comments as well to you guys from the comments. Um, when we come to a place of self awareness, when we recognize things within ourselves um, that don't sit well, and you learn how to let go of that type of stuff, then you become self actualized in your journey to the evolutionary state. And then once you have gone to that phase and fully mastered everything about yourself, and you've learned how to love the good and the bad about yourself, begin to recognize your own humanity. Once you begin to learn how to recognize your own humanity and begin to move from the crown and not the root,
I agree.
you'll be able to see the humanity in others, and you will respect them the same way that you respect yourself, because a lot of us are unaware that how we treat ourselves gives license to how others treat us.
That's right.
And in knowing that and having full understanding of that, that will raise the vibration of the planet.
Yeah, I always like to say that that even when some people don't have self love or they don't treat themselves the way we think they should treat themselves, we should still come approach them with respect and be respectful of them. Um,
Indeed.
yeah,
I wasn't always this gentle speaking person that you hear. I used to be a firecracker. When I understood why that firecracker nature was there, a lot of it was due to being amongst broken elders myself that didn't understand how to use their words, didn't understand that they had things that they were going through and hadn't had a space to process these things. Um, Once I got out of that environment and started moving throughout my journey, I had to really sit with self when I was forced to. And that what led me to go within. Once I was able to go within and recognizing chronologically who I am as well, I started to begin to see that there has always been a disconnect from generation to generation to generation. And as we progress forward, we have to throw away the things that no longer serve us because old ways will never open new doors.
Facts.
thank you for that.
No, thank you. I think that on the topic of eldership, right? It's interesting. I think that as we get older, like when you're young, there's like there's a veil, right,
Mm-hmm.
of flesh and bone that kind of separates you from the person you really are inside. But I think a lot of times when we get older, that veil thins, right? Because you're not
Yeah.
as reliant on flesh and but so your life force and who you are, it starts to peek through. You know what I mean? So I think that some people get to eldership and some people don't because they don't, even though they've been growing older in their body, their soul, their mentality hasn't matured, right? And so they
Absolutely. It's called arrested development.
right. Yeah, that's gonna be that. I gotta. Yeah, we arrested development is a topic in and of itself, and King Pierre, maybe I can have you back at some point and talk about just the power and control wheel.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
for sure. Yeah, my expertise is around domestic and dating violence. So yeah, any topic around that, I'll come and join for sure.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and leave you with this. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at will begin to change.
Whoever wins is the one that writes the history. How did they do it will forever be a mystery. Winning is the mindset you keep when you won't accept defeat. And I repeat, I'm the creator of my sheet. I got some images in my head I don't bother to touch. Anxious cause you don't know who is who and what is what. Setting fires to bridges, yeah, I'm keeping all doors shut. Find solace in being separate cause it's therapeutic. So when you're claiming that you victim, make sure you're the plaintiff. You gon' hear me when I tell you I ain't nothing to play with. I sing it to you in a soft tone, but I got grit. Heard some niggas been talking and listen to what they said, and I'm just mad that she ain't give it to me. And that girl Yon was great when I liked her, but now she ain't with a thing. He said he ain't a fan of marriage, but he passing out rings. Fraudulent, making money, selling off bad dreams. I'm locked up in my head thinking I'm toxic. If you talking down bad, then you may as well just gon' switch up your topic. I ain't got no love for you, gon' stop it. You a thespian and putting up in that, gon' drop it.